The first story. Several years ago, a group of friends decided to plan a weekend getaway to a remote cabin nestled deep in the woods. They found the perfect listing on Airbnb, a quaint cabin surrounded by towering pines, promising seclusion and tranquility. Excited for their adventure, they booked the cabin for a 3-night stay. Upon arrival, the group was immediately struck by the cabin's rustic charm. It was everything they had hoped for and more, with a cozy fireplace, a spacious deck overlooking a serene lake, and large windows offering breathtaking views of the forest. Eager to begin their vacation, they quickly unpacked and settled in. As night fell, the friends gathered around the fireplace, sharing stories and laughter over glasses of wine. But as the hours passed, they began to notice strange noises echoing through the cabin, creaking floorboards, whispered voices, and the sound of footsteps outside. At first, they dismissed it as their imaginations running wild, attributing the noises to the remote location and the settling of the old cabin. However, as the night wore on, the noises grew louder and more unsettling. Unease settled over the group, and they found it increasingly difficult to shake the feeling of being watched. Desperate for reassurance, they tried to contact the Airbnb host, but their calls and messages went unanswered. As the clock struck midnight, things took a sinister turn. A blood-curdling scream pierced the night, shattering the stillness of the forest. Terrified, the friends huddled together, their minds racing with fear and uncertainty. With no cell service and miles away from the nearest town, they were completely isolated, at the mercy of whatever lurked outside. Hours dragged by in agonizing silence, each moment filled with dread and apprehension. Finally, as the first light of dawn illuminated the sky, the friends mustered the courage to venture outside and investigate. What they discovered was the stuff of nightmares. Scattered around the cabin were remnants of a grisly scene, a tattered shirt, a blood-stained knife, and a trail of footprints leading into the darkness of the woods. Horrified, the friends realized that they were not alone in the cabin, that someone, or something, had been watching them all along, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Frantic and terrified, they fled the cabin, racing through the forest in search of safety. Miraculously, they managed to reach civilization and alert the authorities, who launched a full-scale investigation into the mysterious events at the cabin. But despite their efforts, the truth behind the horror remained shrouded in darkness, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the most unexpected of places. To this day, the friends are haunted by their harrowing experience, their once idyllic getaway forever tainted by the specter of fear and uncertainty. And as for the cabin in the woods, it remains a grim reminder of the true cost of seeking refuge in the unknown depths of the Airbnb wilderness. In the days that followed, news of the harrowing incident at the remote cabin spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves through the local community and beyond. The authorities launched an extensive investigation, combing through the forest for any clues that might shed light on what had transpired that fateful night. Rumors and speculation swirled, with theories ranging from a deranged serial killer to supernatural forces at play. Some locals whispered about the cabin's dark history, claiming that it was built on cursed land once inhabited by an ancient tribe driven to madness by dark rituals and forbidden knowledge. As the investigation progressed, the truth proved to be far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. It was revealed that the Airbnb listing had been a sham, a clever facade designed to lure unsuspecting travelers into a trap. The cabin's owner, a reclusive hermit with a troubled past, had been using the property as a hideout, preying on the naivety of those seeking solitude in the wilderness. But the horrors didn't end there. As the authorities delved deeper into the hermit's background, they uncovered a series of unsolved disappearances stretching back decades. It seemed that the cabin in the woods had been a nexus of darkness, a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred into oblivion. The hermit himself was never found, vanishing into the forest without a trace. Some say he still roams the wilderness, a ghostly figure haunting the shadows, while others believe he met a more fitting end, consumed by the very darkness he had embraced. For the friends who had narrowly escaped the cabin's clutches, the ordeal left scars that would never fully heal. They struggled to make sense of the inexplicable horrors they had witnessed, grappling with nightmares that plagued their sleep and a deep-seated fear of the unknown. In the end, the Airbnb horror story served as a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of the dangers that lurk behind the facade of online hospitality, and a sobering reminder that sometimes, the most terrifying monsters are the ones that dwell within ourselves. Months passed, but the memories of that night in the cabin lingered like a dark shadow over the friends' lives. Despite their best efforts to move on, the trauma they had endured continued to haunt them, casting a pall over even the simplest of joys. Their once close-knit group began to drift apart, each member grappling with their own demons in the aftermath of the ordeal. Sleepless nights were spent replaying the events of that fateful night, searching for answers that remained forever out of reach. Therapy sessions offered little solace, as the friends struggled to articulate the depth of their trauma to those who had never experienced the horrors they had faced. Relationships crumbled under the weight of their shared trauma, as trust and intimacy became casualties of the darkness that had consumed them. Haunted by guilt and regret, the friends became consumed by an overwhelming sense of survivor's guilt, questioning why they had been spared while others had not been so fortunate. They sought solace in each other's company, clinging to the fragile threads of their friendship as a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. But try as they might, the scars of that night refused to fade, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that lurks just beyond the edge of perception. And as they struggled to rebuild their shattered lives, they found themselves inexorably drawn back to the cabin in the woods, the place where their nightmares had begun. In the dead of night, they returned to the forest, driven by an insatiable need to confront the demons that had torn their lives apart. Armed with flashlights and courage born of desperation, they ventured deep into the heart of the wilderness, guided by the faint glimmer of hope that they might find closure amidst the darkness. What they discovered in the depths of the forest defied comprehension, a twisted labyrinth of secrets and lies, where reality bled into nightmare and the line between truth and fiction blurred into insignificance. And as they delved deeper into the darkness, they realized that the true horror lay not in the cabin itself, but in the depths of their own souls. For in facing the darkness head-on, they had awakened something primal and terrible within themselves, a darkness that threatened to consume them whole. And as they stood on the precipice of oblivion, they knew that their journey was far from over, that the true test of their courage lay not in confronting the horrors of the past, but in finding the strength to embrace the light that still flickered within their hearts. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, bathing the forest in a soft golden glow, the friends emerged from the depths of the wilderness, their hearts heavy with the weight of their shared ordeal. But in the quiet stillness of the morning, they found a glimmer of hope, a flicker of light amidst the darkness that threatened to consume them. Hand in hand, they made their way back to civilization, their footsteps echoing through the forest like a solemn promise to never forget the horrors they had faced. And though the scars of that night would always remain, they knew that they were not alone, that as long as they had each other, they would find the strength to face whatever trials lay ahead. In the years that followed, the friends found solace in each other's company, drawing strength from the bond forged in the crucible of their shared trauma. Though they would never fully escape the shadows of the past, they learned to live with the darkness, embracing the light that still burned within their hearts. And as they stood on the threshold of a new day, they knew that their journey was far from over, that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges and trials beyond imagining. But armed with the knowledge that they were stronger together than they ever could be apart, they faced the future with courage and determination, ready to write the next chapter in their story of survival. The second story. Sarah had always dreamt of visiting Paris, the city of love and lights. So when she stumbled upon a charming Airbnb listing for a cozy apartment in the heart of the city, she couldn't resist booking it for her long-awaited vacation. Upon arrival, Sarah was immediately enchanted by the apartment's quaint charm. Nestled on a narrow cobblestone street lined with charming cafes and boutiques, it seemed like the perfect place to immerse herself in the magic of Paris. But as the days passed, Sarah began to notice strange occurrences in the apartment. Doors would creak open on their own in the dead of night, and she would wake to find her belongings inexplicably rearranged. At first, she dismissed it as her imagination running wild, attributing the odd happenings to the quirks of an old building. However, as the days turned into weeks, the disturbances escalated. Sarah started experiencing vivid nightmares, each more terrifying than the last. She would wake in a cold sweat, her heart pounding with fear, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. Desperate for answers, Sarah reached out to the Airbnb host, but her messages went unanswered. Growing increasingly unnerved, she decided to do some digging of her own. To her horror, Sarah discovered that the apartment had a dark history, a history that the Airbnb listing had conveniently omitted. Decades earlier, it had been the scene of a grisly murder, a crime of passion that had left an indelible stain on the building's troubled past. Fearing for her safety, Sarah made plans to leave the apartment and find alternative accommodations. But as she packed her bags, she felt a cold chill run down her spine. The air seemed to crackle with an otherworldly energy, and she knew that she was not alone. In a panic, Sarah fled the apartment, racing down the narrow streets of Paris in search of sanctuary. But no matter where she went, she couldn't escape the feeling of being followed, a feeling that grew stronger with each passing moment. In a last-ditch effort to escape the terror that pursued her, Sarah sought refuge in a nearby church, hoping that its sacred walls would offer protection from whatever malevolent force stalked her through the streets of Paris. As she huddled in the sanctuary, trembling with fear, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her. In the dim light of the church, surrounded by flickering candles and the soft murmur of prayers, she knew that she was safe, at least for now. But as the hours passed, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that her ordeal was far from over. And as she closed her eyes and prayed for deliverance, she couldn't help but wonder what other horrors lurked beneath the surface of the city of love and lights. As Sarah sought refuge in the church, she found a brief respite from the relentless terror that had plagued her in the haunted Airbnb apartment. The comforting glow of candlelight and the soft murmur of prayers offered her a sense of solace, a temporary sanctuary from the darkness that lurked outside. But even as she knelt in silent prayer, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every shadow seemed to loom menacingly, every whisper carried the echo of unseen footsteps. She knew that she couldn't stay hidden in the church forever, that eventually she would have to confront the horrors that awaited her in the streets of Paris. Summoning her courage, Sarah emerged from the church into the chilly embrace of the night. The cobblestone streets were deserted, the city shrouded in an eerie silence that sent shivers down her spine. With each step, she felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her, the sensation of being hunted growing stronger with every passing moment. Determined to uncover the truth behind the sinister forces that had plagued her, Sarah retraced her steps back to the Airbnb apartment. As she approached the building, a sense of dread settled over her like a suffocating blanket, but she refused to be deterred. She had come too far to turn back now. Entering the apartment, Sarah steeled herself for whatever horrors awaited her within. But to her surprise, the once chaotic space was eerily still, as if the malevolent presence that had tormented her had vanished into thin air. As she searched the apartment for clues, Sarah's eyes fell upon a faded photograph tucked away in a dusty corner. It depicted a young couple, their smiles frozen in time, standing in front of the very building she now stood in. A chill ran down her spine as she realized that the couple bore a striking resemblance to the figures in her nightmares, a realization that sent a shiver of dread coursing through her veins. Suddenly, the apartment seemed to come alive with a malevolent energy, as if the spirits of the past had been awakened by Sarah's presence. In a panic, she fled the building, the echoes of her footsteps drowned out by the pounding of her heart. As she emerged into the cold night air, Sarah knew that she had unlocked a truth far darker than she could have ever imagined. The haunted Airbnb apartment held secrets beyond her wildest nightmares, secrets that threatened to consume her whole if she dared to delve any deeper. With a heavy heart and a sense of foreboding weighing on her soul, Sarah turned her back on the cursed building and disappeared into the darkness of the Parisian night, leaving behind the horrors that lurked within its walls. But as she vanished into the shadows, she couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmare was far from over, that the ghosts of the past would continue to haunt her wherever she went, their whispers echoing through the labyrinthine streets of the city of love and lights. In the days that followed her escape from the haunted Airbnb apartment, Sarah found herself haunted by the memories of her ordeal in Paris. Though she tried to move on with her life, the shadows of the past lingered like a persistent fog, obscuring her thoughts and casting a pall over her days. Determined to find closure, Sarah embarked on a journey of self-discovery, seeking solace in the quiet corners of the world where the echoes of her nightmares couldn't reach. From the sun-drenched beaches of the Mediterranean to the mist-shrouded forests of the Pacific Northwest, she wandered in search of peace, hoping to leave the horrors of Paris far behind. But no matter how far she traveled, Sarah couldn't escape the feeling that something was still watching, still waiting. The ghosts of the past followed her wherever she went, their whispers echoing in the depths of her mind like a cruel taunt. In the end, Sarah came to realize that the true horror of her ordeal lay not in the haunted Airbnb apartment or the malevolent spirits that had tormented her, but in the darkness that lurked within herself. It was a darkness born of fear and uncertainty, of doubt and despair, a darkness that threatened to consume her whole if she let it. But Sarah refused to be consumed. With each passing day, she found strength in the knowledge that she had faced her demons head-on and emerged stronger for it. And though the scars of her ordeal would always remain, she knew that she was not alone, that as long as she had the courage to confront the darkness within, she would always find the light to guide her way. As she stood on the threshold of a new day, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her, a peace born not of ignorance or denial, but of acceptance and resilience. And as she turned her face to the sun and took her first step forward, she knew that no matter what trials lay ahead, she would face them with courage and determination, ready to embrace whatever the future held. The third story. Ethan and his friends were looking forward to a weekend getaway in the mountains. They found the perfect Airbnb, a secluded cabin nestled deep in the wilderness, promising breathtaking views and endless opportunities for adventure. As they arrived at the cabin, they were immediately struck by its rustic charm. Surrounded by towering pine trees and overlooking a picturesque valley, it seemed like the ideal escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. But as night fell, the mood began to shift. Strange noises echoed through the cabin, creaking floorboards, whispered voices, and the sound of something scratching at the walls. Ethan and his friends tried to laugh it off, attributing the noises to the wild animals that roamed the forest at night. But as the hours passed, the disturbances grew more unsettling. Shadows danced on the walls, their movements fluid and unnatural. And as Ethan lay in bed, he felt a chill run down his spine, a sensation that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the cabin itself. Desperate for answers, Ethan reached out to the Airbnb host, hoping for an explanation. But to his surprise, his messages went unanswered, leaving him with more questions than answers. As the night wore on, Ethan and his friends huddled together, their nerves frayed and their minds racing with fear. They tried to reassure themselves that it was just their imaginations running wild, that there was nothing to be afraid of. But when dawn finally broke, they made a chilling discovery: the cabin was not as empty as they had thought. Hidden beneath the floorboards, they found a series of old photographs, each depicting a different group of guests who had stayed in the cabin before them. As Ethan and his friends examined the photographs, they realized with growing horror that each group bore a striking resemblance to themselves. It was as if the cabin had been waiting for them, luring them into its clutches with the promise of seclusion and tranquility. Terrified, Ethan and his friends fled the cabin, their hearts pounding with fear as they raced through the forest in search of safety. They vowed never to return to the haunted Airbnb, their once idyllic getaway forever tainted by the specter of fear and uncertainty. And as they emerged from the depths of the wilderness, they knew that they had narrowly escaped a fate far worse than they could have ever imagined. For in the heart of the mountains, something dark and sinister lurked, a force beyond comprehension, waiting to ensnare its next unwitting victims in the depths of its twisted embrace. As Ethan and his friends emerged from the forest, their hearts still racing with fear, they knew that they had narrowly escaped the clutches of something far more sinister than they had ever imagined. The haunted Airbnb cabin had left an indelible mark on their psyche, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked in the most unsuspecting of places. Determined to put the ordeal behind them, Ethan and his friends returned home, but the memories of their harrowing experience continued to haunt them. Sleepless nights were spent tossing and turning, their minds plagued by visions of shadowy figures and ghostly whispers. Desperate for answers, Ethan delved into the history of the cabin, determined to uncover the truth behind its dark past. What he discovered sent shivers down his spine. The cabin had once been the site of a series of unsolved disappearances, each more mysterious than the last. It seemed that the cabin had a sinister reputation, with locals whispering tales of malevolent spirits and vengeful ghosts haunting its halls. But despite their warnings, unsuspecting travelers continued to flock to the cabin, drawn in by its rustic charm and secluded location. As Ethan delved deeper into the mysteries surrounding the cabin, he realized that he and his friends had stumbled into something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The Airbnb listing was just a facade, a clever ruse designed to lure in unsuspecting victims and feed their darkest fears. Determined to put an end to the cycle of terror, Ethan contacted the authorities, hoping to uncover the truth behind the cabin's dark past. Together, they launched a full-scale investigation, combing through old records and interviewing locals in search of clues. What they discovered sent shockwaves through the community. The cabin had once been owned by a reclusive hermit with a troubled past, a man rumored to have dabbled in dark magic and forbidden rituals. It seemed that he had used the cabin as a hunting ground, luring in unsuspecting travelers and trapping them in a web of fear and despair. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Ethan and the authorities worked tirelessly to uncover the hermit's secrets and put an end to the terror once and for all. And though their journey was fraught with danger and uncertainty, they refused to back down, determined to bring justice to the victims who had fallen prey to the cabin's malevolent influence. In the end, their efforts paid off, the hermit was apprehended, and the cabin was sealed off, its dark past finally laid to rest. And as Ethan and his friends looked out over the mountains, bathed in the soft light of dawn, they knew that they had finally escaped the clutches of the haunted Airbnb cabin, their ordeal forever etched into the annals of history as a cautionary tale of the dangers that lurk in the most unsuspecting of places. With the hermit apprehended and the cabin sealed off, Ethan and his friends found a sense of closure knowing that they had put an end to the cycle of terror that had plagued the remote mountainside. Yet, despite the resolution, the memories of their harrowing ordeal continued to linger, casting a shadow over their lives. In the weeks that followed, Ethan and his friends leaned on each other for support, finding solace in their shared experience and the bond forged through adversity. They vowed to move forward, to leave the horrors of the past behind them and embrace the promise of the future. As time passed, the scars of their ordeal began to heal, replaced by a newfound sense of resilience and strength. Though they would never forget the terror they had faced in the haunted Airbnb cabin, they refused to let it define them, choosing instead to focus on the lessons learned and the friendships forged in the crucible of fear. And as they stood on the threshold of a new beginning, Ethan and his friends knew that they were stronger together than they ever could be apart. With their shared past behind them and the promise of tomorrow stretching out before them, they set out to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead, knowing that no matter what challenges they faced, they would face them together, united in the bonds of friendship and the triumph of the human spirit. I hope you like this stories. If you want more stories like this, just subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends.